As one of history's most infamous political leaders, Hitler is often regarded today as the embodiment of evil. Yet at the height of his political power, he enjoyed immense popularity among the German people. While his charisma may not be as self-evident today as it once was, the fact remains that not long ago, his speeches mesmerized and mobilized millions. The reasons behind his rise to power are complex, rooted in the economic collapse of post-World War I Germany, the failures of the Weimar Republic, and deep-seated social and political unrest. But among the many factors that propelled him forward, one stands out above the rest: his oratory skills. Here we will examine Hitler's greatest talent, his ability to influence the masses, and explore how his words shaped history. In his youth, Hitler believed he had a talent for speechcraft, but rarely had the chance to prove it. For most of his early life, he was just a failed artist, with his only significant experience being that of a soldier. But in 1919, an opportunity arose. After World War I, Hitler continued working for the military and was assigned to the German army's propaganda section, where he received political training and was charged with delivering speeches to boost troop morale. Regarding his time as an instruction officer, Hitler states the following in his book Mein Kampf. "I took up my work with the greatest delight and devotion. Here I was presented with an opportunity of speaking before quite a large audience. I was now able to confirm what I had hitherto merely felt, namely that I had a talent for public speaking." While he was working for the military, Hitler was ordered to infiltrate the German Workers' Party, the precursor to the Nazi Party. He was quickly drawn to its political discussions and chose to actively take part. At a meeting held in September 1919, party chairman Anton Drexler was impressed by Hitler's oratory skills and offered him party membership, which Hitler quickly accepted. He was discharged from the army in March 1920 and began working full-time for the German Workers' Party, frequently making speeches and sharing his ideas in Munich's beer halls. But it is important to note that Hitler's ideas were nothing new. They had already been promoted by numerous individuals and groups. What set him apart was how he delivered them. Historian Ian Kershaw notes, "Others could say the same thing but make no impact at all. It was less what he said than how he said it that counted." Hitler stood out in Bavaria's far-right circles for his sharp, dramatic speaking style, using short, forceful phrases and absolute statements. While such oratorical skill was common among socialists and communists, it was rare in his group, making him a unique and powerful voice. While giving speeches, he would frequently stand on tables in the middle of the crowd. This novel technique helped create what Hitler regarded as a special mood in the hall. Hitler's speeches were based on rough notes and often lasted more than 2 hours. His themes rarely changed. He contrasted Germany's glorious past with its current weakness and humiliation, blaming traitors, Jews, and enemies for the country's downfall. He condemned the Treaty of Versailles and accused Jews and corrupt politicians of exploiting ordinary Germans. He argued that the only solution was the party's program, which called for a ruthless crackdown on internal enemies and national unity. Hitler's audiences were captivated by his speeches, often erupting in applause and cheering. His technique, starting slow, using sarcasm, making personal attacks, and building to a dramatic climax, stirred the crowd into a frenzy. His speech on "Why Are We Anti-Semites?", held in August 1920, was interrupted 58 times by wild cheering from a crowd of 2,000. Hitler's speeches put him on the political map of Munich, helping him secure additional funding for his associates. Over time, he became a crucial figure in the German Workers' Party. This was made especially clear in June 1921, when a mutiny broke out over political disagreements, leading Hitler to resign in protest. The party committee quickly realized that losing their most popular public speaker would be disastrous. They pleaded with him to return. Hitler agreed, but only on one condition: he would replace Anton Drexler as chairman. In July 1921, he rejoined the party, this time as its leader. Although he quickly rose up the ranks within the Nazi Party, he was still an insignificant player on the German political stage, but in 1924, Hitler would become a household name after the failed beer hall putsch and the subsequent trial. The beer hall putsch was a failed coup by Hitler and other Nazi leaders in November 1923. About 2,000 Nazis marched on the Field Marshal's Hall in Munich, but were met by police. Hitler was arrested and charged with treason. The coup made national headlines and introduced Hitler for the first time to the wider German public. His trial gave him a platform to promote his nationalist views and show off his oratory craft. This was largely possible because the court was overwhelmingly sympathetic to the far right and enamored with Hitler's character. The presiding judge, Georg Neidhardt, even allowed Hitler to speak up to 4 hours at a time and freely question witnesses. One journalist attending the trial described it as a political carnival. The judge's bias was heavily criticized by both the Bavarian government and officials in Berlin, especially for allowing unchallenged attacks on the German army and state police. Neidhardt simply replied that it was impossible to interrupt Hitler's relentless speeches. With the court practically on his side, Hitler took full advantage of the situation. He began his trial by recounting his life story, but quickly shifted to his political vision, captivating his listeners. His words were reported worldwide. To appeal to a broader audience, he even toned down his anti-Semitism throughout the trial. By the end of March 1924, Hitler delivered his final statement, declaring, "It is not you, gentlemen, who pronounce judgment upon us. Instead, the judgment of the eternal court of history will be pronounced against this prosecution." His words moved several people in the courtroom to tears. In the end, he received the lightest possible sentence, 5 years in prison. He would go on to serve only 8 months. The trial had transformed Hitler from a relatively minor regional figure into a patriotic martyr and a rising national leader. Even after serving his prison sentence, the government prohibited Hitler from giving public speeches until 1927, underscoring the power of his voice as a propaganda tool. Nevertheless, he continued to refine his craft, frequently rehearsing in front of a mirror and experimenting with different poses to maximize his impact on audiences. Photographer Heinrich Hoffmann captured these rehearsals in a series of black and white images showing Hitler practicing expressive facial and hand gestures. After seeing the photographs, Hitler ordered Hoffmann to destroy the negatives, but he refused. They were later published in his memoirs after the war. In the years that followed, his oratory skills, along with numerous other factors, continued to propel his career. He became chancellor in 1933 and further centralized the Nazi Party's control over the government. Throughout his political career, he was fully aware of the power his voice carried, and it remained a valuable weapon almost until the very end. From his first speech in Munich 1919 to his final address in February 1945, Adolf Hitler delivered over 1,500 speeches. By most accounts, he personally authored almost all of them. Joseph Goebbels noted that Hitler frequently revised his speeches, sometimes up to 5 times before delivering them, often working late into the night refining his drafts. During his 1932 presidential campaign, the party organized mass rallies across Germany, with Hitler speaking in up to 5 cities a day, traveling by plane, one of the first politicians to use air travel so extensively for campaigning. His campaign slogan, "Hitler over Germany," reflected this modern approach. To heighten anticipation, he often arrived late to his own speeches, building tension among the crowds. While modern portrayals often depict him as a constantly raging figure, these moments were usually brief excerpts from speeches that lasted for hours. In reality, Hitler's delivery was carefully structured. He would start composed and measured, gradually building momentum, until reaching a climactic emotional crescendo that sent audiences into a frenzy. And through it all, he barely stuttered a word. It would be a mistake to say that Hitler's political success was purely a matter of chance, without acknowledging the role of his personal talents. After World War I, he quickly realized that his greatest strength was his ability to captivate audiences who shared his political frustrations. His rhetoric and conviction offered a supposed path to Germany's revival. In another time or place, his message would have seemed absurd. But in interwar Germany, his speeches resonated with those consumed by anger and resentment, fueling his rise. Hitler's political success was shaped by a multitude of factors. Without these conditions, one could easily imagine his name fading into obscurity. But without his skill as an orator, his political career would likely have begun and ended in the beer halls of Bavaria. Instead, he remains one of history's most infamous tyrants.